Anybody that doesn't know me, I'm the NASA Technical Fellow in Software. I work with the NESC, and the NESC gets involved with headquarters and capability assessments and everything. A lot of CFE, CFS actually is very high on the headquarters list, because one of the actions they gave me is there's a study that came out of the SEI recently that every 4 years software doubles, okay? So the creation of a software on a particular project every 4 years doubles. So they didn't think they were going to be able to double the budget every 4 years. So they said, oh, you've got to make your software cheaper. And then then they found out that in terms of NASA, I've got like 2,000 employees working software underneath me. So I started having a little bit of clout because I had more than anybody else. So one of the things we began looking at is, of course, software reuse. And CFE, CFS was our poster child of software reuse. And we claimed at one time, and I sent you guys the slides, about $2 million is saved every time you reuse CFE, CFS. And that was simply, we took the lines of code and ran it through our estimator and said it would take us this many FTEs and this much time for us to regenerate this CFE, CFS if you started from scratch. And that was a good enough argument. Whether it holds water or not really doesn't matter. I was talking to headquarter people. But what it meant was, one of the things that came up earlier on is we should track, not only within NASA, but in your environment, how many installations are actually flying with CFE, CFS. I mean, if we just take a thumbnail sketch and say $2 million and we're flying 20 instantiations of this, we can argue $40 million, and maybe somebody would say that's probably worth putting some maintenance money into it. And that's one thing I'm arguing for. So along with this, first of all, CFE, CFS was very successful. So I went to the agency and I said, well, one way we can save some money is just to make well, let me back up a second. Historically, NASA centers are in competition with each other for contracts. That was historically how it works. We're trying to change that. We don't have the funding to do that anymore, okay? So we have to start being much more the agency-wide type NASA, this one NASA thing maybe you hear. Anyway, there was a push for headquarters to take all of your software and move it in, software that could be reused, and move it into headquarters somewhere. So every center, all shared software would end up in some big cloud thing at headquarters. And none of the centers wanted to do that. The centers said, well, we can share software, but we want to leave it right where it is, and we don't want to spend any more money on it, and we don't want to maintain it, okay? And that's kind of the way I get directed. They say, I want you to do this, but it shouldn't cost me any money, okay? So what we came up with an idea where you leave your software in all these different repositories, and you find some middleware that talks to all those repositories, and it presents a full text browsing interface. And we said, this will work. You leave all your repositories where they are, and you have a single portal that you can go to. Now, let me back up a little bit. NASA can't share software within NASA. In fact, it's illegal to share NASA software with NASA. Sorry, that's the way it is. There's a document out there that did not describe sharing NASA software behind the firewall as any different than sharing NASA outside the firewall. It's called software release. And you have to go through the legal department, and ownership department, and IT department, and software usage agreements to share NASA with the next cubicle, okay? And we're rewriting that. It's taken me, as you well know, about 2.5 years now. And that document is now getting pushed back because we've run into legal people that didn't know what we were doing. So it's very interesting. Anyway, we put together an actual, now this thing doesn't, you're not able to share software, but if you click on that link, which I'm going to try to do, ooh, dangerous. Dun, 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 dun. It's not going to go for it. Because we're playing the show.
Yeah, we need to move the mouse over to their screen.
We need the real stuff. Yeah, I'm always a problem child. Maybe we can click up there on that one. Oh,
Should be NESC shared software. Okay, so we're just going to put it up
I'll
in
just
the,
put it up directly.
yeah. And I can put it up on reader mode. That might actually work. Yeah, let's see if we can click.
Here. What was the URL again?
Actually, if you right-click on it, it'll ask you to go to it. It isn't a live one. You nasty bird.
Okay, believe me, you're probably already doing it right now, and we're struggling over here trying to get it up.
Yeah, VPN works.
Okay, so we're not hooked up at, okay, good enough.
Apparently that-
Let's go to, I'm on VPN. If those of you that are on NASA and behind the firewall can go to this search.nasa.gov, and what we've got is about 300 and something repos throughout the NASA centers, all going to this one environment, and you can do a full text search on, we put a little JSON text file.
Is that the site?
No, it needs to be search.nasa.gov.
No. Yeah, we can't access that one then?
Yeah, that's behind, that's in front of the firewall.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, guys. Anyway, if you get a chance, try this out. It's still in prototype mode. It's very slick. Right now we have open source. Yeah, that's the baby. That we have open source. You can go and when you do a search, you're actually searching on a little text file that we have the repositories put at the root of their repository. And that little text file then has categories and everything. It's dynamic. If you pull a repository out and put a repository in with that text file, it goes out and rebuilds the menus. So I've heard, the reason I bring this up is I've heard you guys wanting to put together some library or catalog for CFE, CFS. And if you do a search on CFE or CFS, you will find that it will link to all the open sources because we wanted to use them as a demo. Susie, in fact, if you go deeper, Susie will just download the file for you right there, so you can ask for an app and it'll just pop it right on your screen because it's open source. The idea is that we should be able to go out and, let's say we wanted to put Laddie, because it has a lot of reuse code, a lot of good examples that we could use, and if it's okay to be used behind the NASA firewall, we should put the entire repo of Laddie out there so that you guys can dig through it. So this is actually happening. If you play with it for certainly the CFE, CFS community behind the NASA firewall, should look into this as the backbone for something you guys can reuse. Because you could come up with your own ontology for how you wanted to search for this stuff. We're looking into going into a full text search of the source code itself, but it's rather worthless. All you get is a bunch of, but depending on whether it's Java or Perl or whatever. Maybe full text of header files or something like this. Who knows? Anyway, that's one thing that is working. It's actually up in a prototype. But there's another side to, oh, I can't do this now. I'm such a problem child.
Where's the mouse go?
What do you want to do?
Okay, try it now.
Yeah. All right. The other side of the coin that I've been working on is how do I get more static analysis tools in everybody's hands, okay? And this is primarily NASA again. However, it applies to everybody outside of NASA. If you go to this site, you can go to it because that top one up there is a public access. There's a group out there called SWAMP, which is Software Assurance Marketplace, okay? And they have a free tool where you upload code to it. It'll analyze your code depending on tools that they have available, and then it'll produce a text file output. Not a lot of us like to upload our code to some supposedly secure. It says it's secure on the website. But that's what they're offering, okay? And it has a bunch of free tools, but they've also got some licensed Clockwork. They've got Coverity on it, where they license that tool at this particular public site. Well, we thought, wouldn't that be great to put behind the firewall so that behind the firewall in a secured environment, I could upload any software, tools, whatever. Because those licenses are expensive. We're getting beyond that. So there's something called Swamp in a Box. And you can download it, and we've got it on the cloud. And this is loaded behind the firewall at Goddard. And it's operational at Goddard. And anybody at other centers can get to that as long as they're behind the firewall. And it's the exact same site. And it's the exact same capabilities to upload software. Now there's a back end to this which has the ability where you don't have to load your software to a site. And we're looking into building hooks to that so that you could run it during build cycles. With this, one of the reasons that's pushing all of this is we don't do anything with security. We do very little with security. And the security money is actually there. So we went after the security money, and we funded a whole bunch of free agency-funded Fortify licenses. And anybody want a license for free, you can get in touch with me, and I think we should put that in the CFS build cycle, give you a license for Fortify. Fortify will do MISRA, MISRA C, MISRA C++. It'll also do the secure analysis also. But you could have a free license that we could plug into your build cycle for CFE, CFS. And I can get you that. So these are things that I don't do all the neat stuff you guys do with, bubbles and lollipops and things. I end up talking to headquarters people and looking for money and saying, how can we improve software across the board? But your stuff fits so well with reuse, with shared catalogs, and giving you static analysis so that you can troubleshoot it. And static analysis on C code is better than static analysis on C++. It's a much more robust analysis. Things we want to do in the future, this is what we do right now. We have a text file you load in the repository. You can do a full text search on that text file, and all you have to do to add a repository, which we would like anybody to offer if they can, is you simply will get in touch with you. You give us access to the repository. We define a text file that you load in the root of the repository, and it's done. Because the rest of the tool goes out, finds the repository, rebuilds the pull downs and radio buttons on the interface, and you're able to grab the software. Now, some of these other things is risk. A lot of people, when we changed it so that we could share software, all of a sudden they thought we were doing the Wild West. People were going to be running around with software in their back pockets, popping their buttons, And legal went ballistic, all right? So we started talking about how do you identify or indicate the level of risk? Because there's legal risk, ownership risk, exposure that NASA has. And so what we're going to do is probably hook the two of these things together so that when you have shared software, you also can run it through these static analysis tools and say, well, what's the risk of using this? Well, here's the static. I've got plenty of comments. It comes through as a MISRA C compliant, et cetera, et cetera. Your risk is real minimal. You can run it through a security check and see if they've got hidden passwords in it or something of that nature, okay? Some other metrics, which I'm going to go into later on this week, is there's some funny metrics for reusability. Does it meet Doxygen compliance? What's the comment density on your source codes of line? It actually does tell you something about whether or not you really want to dig through the comments. Then we will also want that same portal. If you show an interest in a particular piece of code, the portal should also tell you that there is already a community of practice out there that's very interested in this particular IMU driver or something of this nature, so you can get in touch with them. And then if you do check out the code, we'll have to hook you up to a list where, for one thing, for us developers, it's you need a list where you can get alerts for defects or alerts for issues or alerts for we've had a problem or a mishap, in essence. But you can also we also needed a list because legal wanted to be able to tell you, stop using this code and delete it, okay? So NASA doesn't get into legal issues. So these are the kind of things we're going to add to it, and that's the end of that. Now, if you can reach those links, it's a much more useful presentation.
Thank you. Any questions? I'm just needing to move something while you answer questions. Any questions for Mike? Yep.
When are they going to sign that document?
It's already signed, but there are legal folks who aren't involved with it, and who don't know what we're doing, and are saying, whoa, you can't do that. And the document's already signed. So it'll take another while. I know it's taking longer than you want, but you know what? I'm doing it, not you. Yeah. Actually, there was a lot of you doing this, and now I've kind of taken the lead on it.
Thank you. Thank you, Mike.
You bet.